Hey, Jesse.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
How's Mr. Teddy?
He's doing well. We've been practicing like walking and turning and stuff, and it's been going well. But I do have something to show you about that I'm not sure what to do about. But it's like when I'm walking and then I really slow down. I've been like really focusing on slowing down, and then I stop. He like twirls to get in like perfect position with me. He does like a twirl before he sits.
Oh, really?
And I tried to like correct it myself, and I didn't really know what I was doing.
Is he staying at your side or is he moving around you?
He's staying at my side because he like kind of is at my side, but he like knows he might be. Maybe it's because he thinks he's gonna be like a step, like a maybe a foot ahead of me by the time I stop.
Okay.
But he then turns into me and sits like right next to me.
Okay. Because that's technically a pass. So,
Okay.
um,
Turn around.
yeah. So if I come to a stop, like if you've done your job of
Uh-huh.
slowing down and really slowing down because you're super fast,
Yeah.
and he's still going, then that's a correctional turn for sure.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
that's nothing that you're doing incorrect.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll
Um,
try and do that. Hopefully,
yeah.
probably.
Otherwise, oh, because I think you're on the calendar for tomorrow, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then yes, definitely start that now, I guess.
Okay.
And then if we correct it by tomorrow, then great. Otherwise, I'll take a look at it tomorrow.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
but yeah, whenever you've done your job of communication and you've slowed down and everything,
You just jumped.
I know it's all up. You would turn to correct like you normally would as if he just passed you.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Anything else?
No, just
Excited?
I accidentally fed him like a little bit of breakfast, but it's like half the normal amount. It was actually
Okay.
an accident because I ran out of food and I got a new bag, but luckily I only had enough for half breakfast. So, do you think
Sure.
it's still okay?
He should be.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll just jump straight into the resource guardian stuff.
Okay.
And if he's not feeling it, we'll just cancel it. We won't worry about it being a lesson. We'll just reschedule.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. All
So,
right. So what should I do first?
do we have what are we going to use for the
I'll show
resource
you.
guardian?
Hold on. Okay. I froze some turkey because I figured he'd chomp at it a little bit better.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
I didn't have a Kong, but I found like a brand new like wrap baggie holder that I put turkey into, and I
Interesting.
put
Yeah.
it in this bag with the turkey. So
Sure.
I'm already really interested. So
Yeah.
hopefully it'll work.
We'll try with that the red thing
Okay.
because this way he has to dig at it and then we don't have to worry about him eating it too quickly.
I don't know where I should set. I want to get like a good view of the floor too. Is that okay?
Yeah, that works.
And I'm gonna just do it here. Okay. All right, I have his collar on. Let me see if he's. Oh yeah, I also got the
Pad or whatever.
adapter, and it works perfectly. So
Good. Good. And with that adapter, you really don't have to worry so much about rotating if you need to wear it longer
okay,
than
cool.
2 hours.
Yeah.
But I always recommend that people still do it. But technically, that's what it's for. Is that it's meant for extended wear, so you should be fine.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and just plop the treat down.
Okay.
And just let them have at it. Let's see what happens. So if you try to take something from him, does he immediately become defensive or does he like give you a window?
Maybe with me, he would let me take it. Really? There's turkey in there. Here. But oftentimes, and I think in the past few instances, there wasn't like a huge warning. Come on. So actually, I think there is like a little bit of a warning, like a growl.
Sure. Do you know if he has like a threshold or anything like 2 feet, a foot, 5 feet?
I think it's really like when you are touching him or the thing.
He just wants to take it.
He wants to take it to his bed.
Oh, where's his bed? What if we move his bed to the floor there? Do you think that would help?
Yeah. But it typically happens when you're like touching him or the thing.
Okay. So what if you go for the object itself?
I usually, based off our very first session with the prong collar when you came
Yep.
into our apartment,
Yep.
For me, because I know him and everything, I tell him to leave it. And if
Okay.
he doesn't, I make sure he's pulled away before going for it. That's just like my rule, but like not everyone knows that.
Sure.
So I'm not sure.
Okay. So what we're gonna do here is we're not even. So if a dog is eating something, I'm not too concerned about making contact with them while they're eating.
Okay.
I mean, it's like if you're eating your meal, do you want like someone rubbing on your shoulders?
Right.
Like so. There's certain things that I don't push because I'm like I wouldn't like it either as a human. But there's certainly like if you need to take something from him, you want to have a word that tells him to relinquish that object.
Yeah.
So I use the word out. You can use the word leave it, but for me, leave it is more of like a precursor.
Oh yeah.
So you can also use the word drop.
Okay.
It's whatever word you want to use is perfectly fine.
Okay.
And what number do you have him set at right now?
11.
Was that what he was working at earlier?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Was he really like kind of jumpy with it, or did he take it just fine?
He was kind of jumpy with it. I mean, but he reacted a little bit. And when we were on a walk, like I think I went up to maybe like 13, and he seemed to be affected enough to continue,
Okay.
like you jump a little bit.
Let's try going down to like 6. And I'm going to have you step behind him, and I'm going to have you step on the blue leash. Going more towards the handle. There you go. Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to have you, which word do you want to use? Drop or out? Drop?
Yeah.
Okay. You're just going to say the word drop in a very just simple tone, drop, and you're going to start tapping on the 6. And I'm going to have you say tap when you're tapping, okay?
Okay. Drop.
Are you tapping?
No. Okay.
Yes? You are?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and go to 8. And just tap, 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 tap. Good. Let's see here. Okay, good. Now go over to the turkey.
Okay.
Good. Yep, and you can pick it up. Good. So what we did there is we're starting to cue the word drop and give it power. Okay. So when you're trying to control something, so here, like, it's not that you don't want him to take treats and stuff, is that you need a word that tells him to relinquish what he has so that you can then take it.
Mm-hmm.
So if a dog is in possession of something and you just go and grab it, that's technically stealing, right?
Yeah.
Now, I've had people, I actually just had this happen recently with a client with their puppy, that for the first month, their puppy let them take the bone from them, no problem. Mm-hmm. And then just like a week ago, the puppy bit the youngest child because she was trying to take his bully stick.
Yeah.
And I told the owner it's because, you know, either one, personality shift, and now the dog's like, no, I'm not going to let you bully me and take my things.
Yeah.
Or two, the dog gets tired of things being taken from it, and technically it's not been surrendered.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like if something is yours and someone just came to take it or took it from you, you would like call the police or say that person's stealing, right? But if you decisively give that person an object, not by force or anything, that's not stealing, you're giving it to them, right? So it's similar here. What we're doing with Teddy is we're teaching him a word that means relinquish what you have. And I want him to give space like he did. And the reason why I hesitated was because if the dog is still too close to the object when you go to remove it, they'll pursue. Okay, but then, like, because I was kind of debating on whether or not we should tap him a little more, but he ended up going off further and laying down. So that's why I was like, okay, cool, we don't need to do anything. Okay, so we start off really low because we don't want to kill the food drive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can only really do this a few times. And when you do this going forward, what I do is whenever I'm going to give the dog something, I give them the object, and then I let them enjoy it. And at the very end, I'll cue the word, you know, drop, and then use the remote to get them to relinquish it. And then I'll grab the object and put it away. But I wouldn't practice a bunch of times every time because it makes the dog not interested.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had to do it today for the sake of training, but outside of this, I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
And then ideally, if you rehearse this a bunch of times, he understands the word drop, and when you cue it, even if there's no collar, he'll just disengage and walk away and give you distance, and then you can pick it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Questions?
I thought I just had one. What if it's like, since this is kind of similar to, you know, him like maybe finding something in the trash, like a piece of paper.
Right.
What if he like has like a piece of paper that was wrapped, you know, over chicken or something, and like won't like leave the trash alone, which normally we don't like let him have the opportunity, but you know, just hypothetically, would I do the same thing where, I don't know, since it's not food, it won't kill the food drive, but.
Correct. So like you're saying, like, let's say there's a garbage can, someone puts some leftover food in there, and he's like kind of rummaging.
Yeah.
Okay. I made a note of that. I'll address it at the end.
Okay.
Okay, because that's it's a different approach than we would do here. Okay. So this is more so like a controlled approach. Technically, like let's say you're outside with him and he's off leash and he picks up like, I don't know, goose poop. Like technically you can say drop and he spits it out and then it's done, right? But because it's not gonna, like, you're gonna leave that object at some point, so I'm not really worried about him staying focused on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas with the digging in the trash, like it's gonna be a constant presence because everybody has garbage in the home. Is I would go about that differently, where I would eliminate that behavior entirely.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one we're controlling the behavior.
Okay. Got
Okay.
it.
So go ahead and use the leash to bring Teddy back into the bed again. And then just drop the treat in there. Good. And we're gonna just leave him alone for a bit. Okay. So when you do this, the reason for the leash is just in case if we need to like stabilize him or anything, we have it present.
Yeah.
Because like I wasn't too sure how he was going to register the hits, because I know a few times in the training session he's kind of overreacted, so I didn't want him running off.
Yeah.
And when we do resource guarding, people a lot of times think like that we would trigger the guarding behavior before we would use the remote, and it's the other way around.
Yeah,
I don't.
When we first started this session, I was like, am I gonna have to like trigger Teddy? But that's okay, that's good to know.
Yes, no, we do not have to do that. We can avoid that entirely.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so that keeps everybody safe. Okay, So that's why I was asking if he has like a threshold or anything.
Yeah.
So once Teddy learns the word drop, like you could be in a separate room and say drop and he spits it out.
Okay.
Right? Because we're empowering the word, and this is why I like e-collar, because it allows me to work with situations like this and not put the owner or human at risk of bite.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Starting low is so that we don't. That's why I asked if 11 made him jump earlier. So with obedience, I don't mind the jumpiness so much because it means urgency.
Yeah.
But with the resource guarding, because I don't want to kill the food drive, I always go down lower and then I'll just tweak it and work my way up real subtly. So I just want him to understand that the word drop does mean he needs to relinquish it, but not make him wary of food.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna do the same thing. And actually let's go down to 7. Let's see if 7 will work.
Okay. All right, I'm at 7.
And then you're gonna cue the word drop and then tap.
Okay. Drop.
Yep. 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 Back to 8. Now we're going to make a tweak to when you approach an object, okay? I'm going to have you approach the object, but you're going to be facing Teddy. Okay? And then when you go down, you're actually going to crouch down first, and you're going to watch Teddy, and then you're going to start to move towards the object, and you're watching Teddy. If you were to see any intent of him, any intent or any interest in the object, you would freeze and tap to actually get him to back away a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. Now I didn't see anything the last time, but I just want to get you used to when we remove an object, you always want to be prepared the dog might re-engage.
Yeah.
So it puts you a step ahead.
Okay.
Okay. So go ahead and position yourself.
What if he's looking at my hand going for it?
Okay, try this. Go ahead and move more towards the right, like you're in front of the bed, but you're still facing him. There you go. Right? And then slowly but surely move towards with your hand to the object. There you go. So you see how he's looking at your hand?
Yeah.
Go ahead and just give a tap. Move hand back. Tap. 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 Go to reach. Okay, go in and grab it. There you go. Okay, so he's observing, but I'm not seeing any.
The intensity.
Yeah, he would have. Now that I think about it, he would have looked at the object more so than your hand.
Okay.
If he wanted to challenge you over it.
Yeah.
So if we go back, technically his first response would have been fine. But then he like moved closer, then he got really close, right? And the reason why we're not saying anything here is all of this is tying to the drop command. Okay, drop means to surrender what you have and give space so that when the person goes to pick it up, the more space you command from a dog, the less interested they are in the object. Okay, so like if you told him drop and he spit it out and he backed up, but it was still right in front of him,
yeah.
like I'm expecting the dog's going to go after my hand because it's still within striking distance for them. Okay, so the more distance you ask for or demand, the less likely we are to see any reinitiation. Okay. We'll go ahead and I'm going to have you take Teddy, bring him to the bed. You're going to praise him. Good boy.
Good boy. Come on, get in the bed. Come on. Good boy.
Good. Yep.
Good boy.
Good. Praise and go ahead and just drop it down again. Good. And go ahead and have a seat at the table there?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll talk to you about the trash thing now so we can leave him alone for a bit.
Okay.
So For digging in the trash, have I ever talked to you about a bonker?
No, but I actually just learned about it from this guy who you just posted about. The Jeff
Yes.
guy.
Yeah.
I
Right.
got it because I've seen him on TikTok randomly, like popping up, and I didn't know that was a strategy, but it's brand new to me, so that's all I know.
Yes. So I'm actually going to send you 3 videos,
Okay.
and Jeff is in 2 of them, and then there's a different trainer in the 3rd one.
Okay.
Okay. So a bonker is a rolled up towel, and like in a cylinder shape, and you use rubber band or rubber bands or hair bands to keep its shape, and you use it to bonk the dog. Okay. So for my puppies, it's really effective, and even adult dogs as well. I just started using it like maybe in the last year or so. I didn't use it prior because I just hated the word bonker. But it helps for things inside the home so that you don't become so reliant on the e-collar. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say we find Teddy digging in the garbage. If you have the remote, you could just remote him, and I would make it a harsh correction. So I don't really care what number it's at, but I would be much higher because you're trying to eliminate him digging in the trash. Okay. So when we want to eliminate a behavior, it's just consequence, and a consequence firm enough to deter it from happening again. When we want to control a behavior, we have to have a cue, a verbal cue or some kind of visual cue, something that notifies the dog. Once you see or hear this, the remote will immediately kick in until you perform a certain behavior, right? So like if I say sit, if the dog doesn't sit, remote goes off until the dog puts its butt down. In terms of obedience, in this sense here with the resource guarding, when you say drop, remote goes off until Teddy relinquishes the object, right? And over time, Teddy will recognize the word drop and go, when I hear that, I need to relinquish this object, and the quicker I do so, the faster this tap goes away, or I don't even get the tap, period. Okay. So that takes time because we have to teach the dog in repetition so the dog gets a very firm concept of what that word means. When I don't care about the behavior and I just want to stop it, then it's just harsh consequence or whatever consequence is adequate to deter the behavior from happening again. So you could, if he's got the e-collar on, like I've had clients, and every dog is different. Like I've had clients whose dogs will go to dig in the garbage and they'll blast him at 127 and they'll keep digging in the garbage.
Wow.
Yeah. And they'll say, Jesse, is the dog stupid because I keep hitting him on 127, but they keep going in the garbage. And I go, well, dogs have a higher pain tolerance than we do, for one. 2, yes, if the reward is worth the punishment, the dog will do it. And even humans do the same shit, right? Yeah. If it's worth it, they'll try to get away with it. So in those cases, I'll tell them if 127 for actually going in the garbage doesn't work, then I'll do 127 for even looking or sniffing towards the garbage.
Okay.
So I'm steps before.
Yeah.
Okay, people tend to wait for the behavior to be happening when they correct, and I want to correct the thought process. Because then the dog goes, crap, I can't even think about going in the garbage without getting this harsh consequence. And that's how it's not worth it, because they can't even get there. Yeah. Okay. But if they can actually be there, even if it's for a second, and be with their nose in the garbage, a lot of times they will continue to take the hits just to do that 1 second of digging. Okay. With the bonker, I always suggest that people make a few of them, at least 3, maybe 5, because sometimes in the beginning, when you go to correct them, so you can either whack them with it or you can throw it at them. And when I send you the video, the trainer that is actively correcting the dog is using considerable force, just to give you a visual, okay? So if I were to catch Teddy already in the garbage, if I'm across the room, you can throw it. Otherwise, you can go and just very firmly bonk him or whack him. And if he scuttles his little butt away, perfect, we're good. We leave it alone. Okay. I personally would not say anything before the correction because I want him to learn if you don't want to be corrected, you don't go in the garbage, period.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason for making multiple is sometimes the dogs will think it's a game. Yeah. And you go to correct them and they'll grab the towel and they'll start playing with it. So then I'll tell my clients to keep correcting very firmly, whether they're throwing them or whacking the dog and just kind of cycling through their bonkers until the dog goes, holy crap, this isn't fun anymore.
Okay.
So the way I look at that is like when I was growing up, because I was spanked when I was a kid. And when I got to that age where spanking wasn't very effective, I remember the first time my mom spanked me, like I started laughing.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, you think it's funny? So then she just kept whooping my ass until it wasn't funny anymore. Yeah. And so it's like the same thing for the dog. You know, when you're bonking them, they might think, oh, this is a game. And I go, no, it's not. And I continue to correct them until they go, holy crap, this is not fun. And typically after the first or second time of doing that, they get the point and they'll respect the bonker as a disciplinary tool. Okay. And you can use this approach for anything you don't like. So with obedience, we have to teach the dog what to do because they're not meant to sit and down and stay and come and all that stuff. They're not meant for that stuff, okay? So we have to teach them how to do that. When it comes to stopping a behavior, they do this amongst themselves. You know, so like if you're touching Teddy while he's eating, he starts growling and maybe he gets snippy because he's saying, don't touch me, yeah. Right? Or if you go for his bone, stay away from my bone, don't touch my bone. Right? So the concept of don't do something or what you allow and what you don't allow is something that dogs have amongst themselves. So we don't need to teach that to them. They already have that in them. So what I always suggest is you make a list or of behaviors you don't want him to do. And then if you don't want him to do it, period, you just correct him firmly every time he does so, no warning.
Okay. Okay. Write that down. Just like the non-cueing, because I have a feeling like in the moment I'm gonna want to be like drop or leave it.
Right, and everybody does it at some point. Yeah. But what happens is when you empower your presence, like I correct dogs without saying anything all the time, and I do the Caesar Milan hiss, like that's how I learned. Yes. So I do the sound, and people always wonder why my hiss is so effective when theirs is ineffective. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell them once I correct the dog one firm time, one good time, I establish the respect right off the bat. So when they hear the hiss, they're like, "What the hell does that mean?" Yeah. So when you start applying firm corrections, it empowers what you say. So if one day you don't have the collar and you say drop, he's gonna be like, crap. Like he's like, typically you don't warn me, but now you're saying something, so I'm gonna really respect that right now. Okay. I always say it's better to overcorrect in terms of intensity than undercorrect, because you make your life easier in the long run because it'll be infrequent. People's biggest mistake is when they go to correct their dog, they're afraid of hurting them or they think they're hitting them. And I'll tell them, it's a psychological barrier that everybody has, but going back to spanking, I was spanked, but the intention wasn't to hurt me, it was to teach a lesson. Yeah. It's the same thing for the dog. Like even if you're whacking them with the towel, like you don't want to hurt them, but you're trying to teach a lesson of, don't dig in the garbage, right? Yeah. And if you overcorrect, you're going to build that respect factor like right off the bat. Now, the only issue I see with this is I think I did a hand correction with Teddy when he was at my facility here. And he kind of did like at me.
That's an example of, I think, what he's been doing recently, more so than like a full-blown attack that we saw like in the beginning kind of. But yeah, that's a very good example of what he does.
Yes. So it's not uncommon. you know, and people ask, is this making my dog more aggressive? And I say no. The dog is correcting you or saying, hey, who are you to correct me? Okay, that's what that conversation is. Because in the dog world, respect isn't given. Like, so you can raise a kid and tell them, you know, respect your elders, respect cops, and respect firefighters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they just do that, right?
Yeah.
Dogs don't. Dogs, you have to earn that respect. And they earn it through biting each other.
Yeah.
So if I come in with physicality, I always, in the back of my head, assume the dog is going to correct me back because it puts me a step ahead. So I remember because he was pawing at the kennel and he didn't have his prong on. And I just went over there and I opened it and I gave him a Caesar jab with my hand. And he came at me with that. So I was like, all right. And I just jabbed him even harder. And then he moved back and he was like, oh.
Yeah.
So I won that conversation. Yeah. Okay. So when that happens, you have to already be ready for either the reciprocation or to come back even firmer, because if I leave it there, he technically won.
Yeah.
Okay. So because the bonker is a physical thing, there's a possibility that he tries that approach. The positive is that it's not coming from you. You know, it's not your hand correcting him, it's a towel. So I would just foresee him kind of charging a bit, but that's where you like come in and like, you know, do a home run swat and get a good firm correction in where he's like, holy crap, that was a bad decision. Okay. And his size doesn't matter. Have I told you my Chihuahua story?
I don't think so.
So my Chihuahua was 8 pounds, and the first year of his life, he was a feral dog.
Oh.
So when I got him, he wasn't potty trained, he wasn't crate trained, he wasn't house trained. He wasn't even used to being inside a house, and he was super dog reactive. And I had him on a prong collar because it was before I did e-collar, and he would go barking and lunging and snapping, and I would correct him so hard with the leash, he would spin.
Yeah, you did tell me this. People were like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
It looked bad.
Exactly, right? And I would have to do it 3 times before he would actually cut the crap. Okay? So don't let size throw you off. Okay? Because as a human, you're logical. You know, you're going, man, that was a really firm swat for a 18-pound dog or something, right? But to Teddy, it may not have even been like a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. Like to you, it might be a 10 for him, but for him, it's a 3. You know, so you have to learn Teddy's intensity and physical resilience and toughness to start learning how to administer very firm, correct corrections. Okay. The way you can always tell if the correction was good is that, let's say he's digging in the trash and you give him a really good bop and he kind of looks at you and goes back to digging in the trash. I go, obviously that did nothing. Yeah. Right. And maybe you give him a really good whack and it sends him off a couple of feet and he looks at you and he goes right back to the garbage. Right. That's telling you how to scale your intensity. So I just go firmer, firmer, firmer until eventually maybe that third one, it registers and he yips and he runs away. Yeah. Now I know I want to make the third correction the first correction now. Yeah. Because he's already told me that's what I need because it took so many times to get him to prove the point to him.
So is the point of the bonker just because it's more accessible for all situations in the home versus like me being here with my e-collar all the time? Okay, got it. Yeah.
So like with the drop for the next, you know, this is probably going to take you a bit to get to be solid and reliable, even sans collar, but then also to empower it with like your roommates. Okay, because that's going to be empowering the phrase of drop even with your roommates.
Yes, that's good.
That's going to be a process.
Like watch me practice it, or will once he learns the command, he'll be able to take that from them too if they say drop?
Yes and no. So like he'll recognize the word.
Okay.
but we have to associate the tap with their voice.
Okay, so they should be here. We should practice with them too. Like
Correct.
not
Like, yeah, they don't have to be here now, but so what I'm teaching you is the exercise of teaching the drop, right?
got it.
And like, let's say later tonight you give Teddy the treat again, and then maybe instead of you saying drop, you have one of your roommates say drop,
Okay.
and then you do the remote,
Okay.
right?
Got it.
You can teach him as well. Like it's simple. This is a very simple exercise.
Yeah.
But since he doesn't know where it's coming from, like you could do it yourself, or you can have your roommate do it. So you can start building the importance of that word even with their voices.
Okay, got it. That's good. I want him to be able to listen to them too for that command.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. And with them, like, there's a couple ways of going about it. You could either teach it yourself, and then when you incorporate them, you just bump the number a little bit.
Okay.
So you kind of make it more meaningful when they say the word drop.
Yeah.
But then you might get that kind of that drop in food drive.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you want to, when you can, like if they're present and he's got an object, use that to your advantage. And over the course of time, you're building what they say to mean something.
Got it.
Now you could also, if needed, let's say Teddy's got something, right? And he's not collared up, and you're not far along to have empowered the word drop. Okay. But you need him to relinquish it.
Yeah.
I go grab a few bonkers, cue the word drop. He doesn't respond, you whack him.
Okay.
Okay. Because you're still able, because it's the reason why that would work is because you're just needing him to stop and surrender and get away from something.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't say sit, and if he didn't sit, I wouldn't bop him. Okay. That doesn't register like that.
Yeah.
But behaviors like this, you can, because I just harass him with the bonker until he thinks this isn't fun, and he relinquishes the object, and then I can put it away.
Okay. And my roommates, can they do the bonker just without me being there and me explaining to them our conversation that we're having now, and they can use the bonker and
Yes.
what we talked about? Okay.
But you would want to educate them on what they would expect to see from Teddy in terms of reciprocation. Okay. And then the videos, feel free to share that with them as well. It's meant to give you a visual so you understand how it's used and everything.
Yeah.
So like, let's say barking at the front door or barking out the window. So like, let's say, you don't want Teddy barking out the window, period. You just bonk him for that. Okay. And he'll learn like, okay, I don't bark out the front window, but maybe you don't want him to bark when people come over or knock because it's security, or it lets you know someone is there. Right.
Yeah.
Then there would be more behind that because we want to control it. We don't want to eliminate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Question so far?
No.
So you see how he's kind of done here with the object?
Yeah.
So go ahead and just cue the word drop and start tapping.
Okay. Should I stand up?
What's that?
Should I stand up?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Drop.
There you go. Let's see what he does. There you go.
Okay.
Yep. And then it's like a little parrot.
Hello.
Go ahead and go back to the object. There you go. Is there any left, or did you get it all?
There's none left, but I can put more in it.
Okay, let's go ahead and refill it.
Okay. It's actually working pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's smart. Now, when you give him stuff, does he ever jump for it or anything, or is he usually pretty respectful?
He used to not be respectful at all and would jump. I've been trying to like give it to him more slowly, and that seems to like make him wait for it a little easier and lets me bring it to his mouth before he jumps. But he's not very respectful. He's never been like a gentle dog when he takes something.
So what we're gonna do is the release part is easy.
Okay.
That only took what, 2 taps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's already starting to associate. He's responding faster now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So what we're gonna work on is now the front half of giving things to him. So go ahead and get your remote, grab Teddy, and then you place him back on the doggy bed. Good. Almost.
I haven't taught him place yet, but
Yeah, it's fine.
over that in our other sessions.
Excuse me?
Should we go over place in like our next Zoom session?
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah, we're already. We can do it in the next Zoom session, or we can do. I can actually bring a placemat with me to the training. To the.
Oh, that's great.
Did you see the video? It's up on YouTube.
Yes, I did. I did see it. I just haven't. I watched it. I just haven't like done it yet. So I could also try that.
Yeah, I would do that first.
Okay, I'll do that first.
It's really simple to teach, and then I can always bring one, and then we can spend a few, like 10 minutes on it, and then work on something else.
Okay, I'll let you know if I need you to bring the mat.
Yeah, I always have one in my trunk.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna teach Teddy some manners.
Okay.
So when I give a dog, if I bring an object out for my dogs, they don't assume that I'm gonna give it to them. Okay. So my dogs, like if I pick up, like most people when they open the treat bag and stuff, like the dogs will come running.
Yeah.
My guys, most of the time, they don't do anything.
Okay.
That's because it means nothing to them. Unless I say, okay, come and get a treat. Like just me grabbing the bag does not mean anything, And I like that because then I don't have them, if I go to open something for, chips for food or anything like that, they're not constantly rushing like, what do you got? Are we going to get some?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And part of that was me just correcting them when I would come out with stuff like let's say I had a tennis ball and I would walk through the house and my pit would jump in my hand to try to bite the tennis ball out. I would correct her for that. Mm-hmm. And I taught her just because I go to grab this object does not mean you're going to have access to it. Mm-hmm. Okay. You're given permission and then you'll get to play with it. Okay. So what you're going to do here is you'll squat down in front of Teddy and you're just going to hold your hand out, to like a casually like that and go a little bit lower. Tap. Tap. Grab his leash, pull him back to the place or to the bed. Yep. And then, yep. He's like, screw that bed, man.
I know.
Yep. There you go. Yep. Give him a little nudge with the leash towards the bed and tap. Tap. Good. Up, tap. There you go. Tap. Good. Yeah, he's just getting a little confused. Tap, tap, tap. Right there, almost. There we go. Good. Almost. Tap, tap, tap. Okay.
Come here.
Tap, tap, tap. Good. Right there. Okay. And then present. There we go. Tap, tap, tap. So what you're teaching them is just because you're pulling back, you're presenting something, doesn't mean he's going to have access to it.
Okay, got it.
Okay. See how he's turned away from it now? Yeah. Okay. Go a little bit closer to him. Right. Okay. Bring him back. tap, 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 there. Okay. So what we want is when you present something that he waits respectfully for it. Yep. Good. That he waits respectfully for it, and then you would cue the word. You can use okay. You can use break. Right. So saying like now you have permission to take the object. Okay. So technically, even if you set it down in the bed, technically it would still be off limits until you cue that word. Okay. To make things a little easier for now, I'm going to have you just say okay and give him the object and then just move away from it.
Okay. Like right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. The reason why I did it that way is because he's getting kind of paranoid about what's going on with the plate with the bed. He's thinking like that. The reason he was moving off of it is because he was starting to think that it was the object that he was on, when really it was just him putting his face in the turkey.
Got it. So next time I practice this, should I practice it kind of like not on a bed?
Yeah, that was fine. Yeah, and then, so let's say like later on today you go and you're going to give him another round of this, right? And you bring it out, you squat down, he comes running over, like puts his face in it. I don't say anything, I just tap. Because I'm eliminating him, assuming that when I bring something out that he's going to have immediate access to it. Okay? And then he might step away, he might walk off and like lay on the carpet somewhere. That's fine. Then I go up to him, okay, and I give it to him. And then, before he finishes, you can cue a drop, remote him to surrender it, pick it up, present it again. He tries to go for it. You tap to correct. Wait a moment. Okay, and then let him finish it. Okay. Or you could just do one at the very end. And sometimes at this stage, I might give him something and let him finish it entirely and not mess with him. Okay, so he doesn't always think that something's going to happen, because then it'll make him become distrustful and he won't want to take anything from you. Okay. Questions about that stuff? Is there anything else that he potentially resource guards?
His bones, but I'm not sure they're more exciting than this.
Sure.
But it's happened like once with bones, and then once when he got some sort of really good piece of trash. So nothing else I can think of.
Sure. Okay. If there's anything that you find is like higher value, I would work with that kind of stuff too, because if you can get them to surrender that easy peasy, then everything else is even easier. Okay. So now you have both pieces. You have the don't assume when I have something that it's going to be for you, which kind of removes a bit of that entitlement and depowers the resource guarding a bit. But now you also have the command of relinquish that, because if he gives up something and leaves it, there's nothing to guard anymore. That's how this works.
Yeah.
And then the bonker, of course, you can use for anything you want to correct that you don't like. If you applied it to, like, I think you said jumping on people's laps, right?
Yeah.
You can use it there too, but you'd have to correct him before. Now, if he's already on the person's lap, if he's got the e-collar on, you can remote him off their lap. You would just have to have the leash to guide him off, or you may have to pull on his collar just a bit to direct him off of the person as you're remoting until he hops off, and then it turns off. Okay, so that's already if he's already on their lap, because if you try to remote him as he's on their lap, he'll probably just dig in deeper.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other behaviors in the home that you wanted to correct?
Let me check my list. I think we've really hit all of them, but let me just double check.
Sure.
I mean, there was
there's one instance in particular that I told you about last time where we were out on the back patio and a dog.
Oh, right.
Like peeing kind of like 10 feet from us, and Teddy like just was screaming and not responding to my prong directions. But you said the e-collar could solve that pretty quick.
Correct. Yeah. So what I would do there is it like there's chairs out there and stuff?
Yep, a little table and chairs.
Okay, what I would do is take Teddy and like tether him to something.
Okay.
So it could be a chair leg. You just put it through the handle and sit in the chair, and then if you can force the situation, that'll make things easier. So it's like, hey, someone bring your dog, and then when he launches, he's not going to get far.
Yeah.
So you would keep that dog out of that range.
Yeah.
And then you just start remoting and working your way up until eventually you'll see Teddy going from charging to retreating and moving away. Okay. Then I remove the dog, wait 15 minutes, reintroduce the dog. Maybe Teddy perks up, like, hey, what's going on? And then tap there, but it should be much easier because he already knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then I repeat again, 30 minutes later, and then the dog comes in. Teddy doesn't even pay him any mind. Perfect. You don't do anything. Let the dog sit there. Get them used to coexisting. If you don't have your e-collar, you can also use a bonker for that because you're just stopping a behavior. And whenever we see any kind of forward type movement like that, you always want to get the dog to retreat. Okay. It's super important. A lot of times people will stop the dog, but the dog will stay stationary. Like they'll be like anchored to the spot, and I'll tell them that they're still stuck in that mindset. Whenever a dog is becoming an aggressor, you want them to retreat, always. Okay. And then what you'll start to see is maybe when the dog comes by again, like you'll see Teddy look at him and just walk away naturally. So he's thinking, okay, I know not to go into conflict because last time I went to conflict, remote went off. But as long as I mind my business and or move away, I don't have to worry about anything. Okay. The potential hard part is if that dog actually moved into your social space.
Yeah.
Okay. Which would be a different thing. Would that actually even happen?
Not with our neighbors' dogs who we don't know.
Okay.
We've had maybe one dog come over here, but Teddy was fine with him being in his space.
Sure.
It was kind of the dog was like, "Hey, Teddy, you're being too like playful. Kind of like get away from me."
Sure.
So that we like kind of separated them and put them on their own leashes, but nothing like what I saw in that instance with this stranger dog.
Gotcha.
So it would never come to where he would be in our space.
Okay. Yeah. And is there a divider or something?
Yeah. So our patio is probably like 5 or 6 feet off the ground, and the dog was on the ground, probably 10 feet away from us. So he was in Teddy's view.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah, that's normal. That's like territorial behavior. So like I would assume that any dog that comes into the space of like where you live and stuff and coincides with Teddy, there shouldn't be an issue unless it's over a resource, maybe, unless he doesn't guard with dogs, or like if Teddy's in your personal space and the dog tries to come into your personal space, potentially something there.
Yeah.
So those are just things that I would keep an eye out for. Are you familiar with resource guarding, like in terms of like different types of scenarios?
Not really, other than what I've seen with him, which is like the bones and the food.
Okay, so a resource is just anything that the dog, thinks is theirs and is invaluable to them. It can be the owner, it can be an object, it can be his bed, it can be the couch, it could be a roommate, it could be a particular section of the home. So inside your home, in that context, if a dog came over, like I said, like if you're sitting on the couch with Teddy next to you and the dog tried to jump in on that, I would assume Teddy would most likely have a problem with that.
Yeah. Okay.
It just puts you a step ahead, and maybe he doesn't, right? But as soon as you see that context arise or starting to like happen, I look at Teddy, right? And if you see him like sleeping and all of a sudden he starts raising his head, like, "Hey, what's going on here?" That's the precursor.
Okay.
Okay. So then I would either stop the dog if you're not ready and prepared, so that the dog doesn't continue to close the gap to which Teddy would explode. Or if you have like your bonk or whatever, when you see him pick up his head, you just whack him, and you're like, you shouldn't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, we can't make Teddy learn to, and that, let's say that happens, we can't make Teddy learn to share you with another dog. Okay, we can't make that happen. But you can work around it. Like, let's say if you called the dog into your space first and then called in Teddy, you're working around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Got it.
Or, if you put Teddy in your space, like you said, Teddy, come here, and then you invited the other dog, you'll get kind of like a 50-50 until you figure out like what Teddy is like.
Yeah.
But like, let's say he did become defensive with that and you corrected him, it would actually apply later on, in the sense of if you called him and then called the other dog, he would learn like, all right, mom's inviting the dog.
Yeah.
It's not the dog inviting themselves, which is a different scenario, that he would have learned to allow that to happen. Okay? But it's harder to get the dog to allow a dog to invite themselves into the space. Okay? I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's just that's typically where people struggle. Okay? Yeah, anytime you see Teddy in or near, in possession or near something that you feel like he might find valuable, and a dog approaching, you just want to watch Teddy to see, are there any cues.
Okay.
Have you ever seen him guard with a dog before?
Actually, yes. My parents' dog, we stayed with them for about a month, like in April, and my parents' dog is really submissive and just is very submissive with other dogs. So whenever my parents' dog would be chewing on a bone, Teddy would come up and just take it from him. Just always cared about whether this dog was chewing on a bone. Teddy, like, no matter what bone it was, Teddy wants it. And Teddy would just take it.
Sure.
When Webster, like, would get near Teddy while he was chewing a bone, Teddy didn't, like, growl or anything, but also Webster didn't try and take it from him.
Sure.
So I don't know what that would be like.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem like he valued the bones.
Yeah, so some dogs will guard against anything or anybody. Some dogs will guard against humans but not dogs. Some will guard against dogs but not humans, and some will guard against both. Okay? So it's just trying to figure out which one is Teddy. Okay?
Yeah.
I always assume, anytime I have a dog that I don't know, I always assume certain behaviors, because then when I watch for it, then I can decipher whether or not it's going to be an issue. Okay?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, I forgot one incident at my parents' house, which was a blackout moment for Teddy as well, was Teddy got into Webster's food, and then I came and, like, said, leave it, dragged Teddy away, and Webster was just kind of off and 4 feet away, like, looking confused and curious, and Teddy just started attacking Webster. Sure. And my dad had to get in and, like, body block him, and, like, kind of, like, Teddy wasn't going to stop unless my dad, like, leaned him out of the way. So I think that he's very also a resource guarding with dogs, too.
For sure. So one thing is, let's say Teddy's around Webster again, and you see him going for his bones. The moment you see him going for the bone, you remote him.
Okay.
You want to eliminate that, because that's empowering him, because he's bullying, right? And he's getting away with it, and then it can potentially become worse, right?
Yeah.
So anytime you see Teddy going for something that is not his, you remote it. Okay, it's just off limits. Period.
Yeah. Okay. It was funny in the beginning until.
What's that?
It was kind of funny in the beginning. Like, we were all like, "Oh my gosh, Teddy, you're being a bully." But then this happened with food, and we were like, "Okay."
Yeah, for sure. Especially because he's a smaller guy and he's a pug at that, right? So it's just like even funnier until it's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Yeah, and then you can even do like when he's eating his kibble, like that's another instance where you can practice the drop, and then you can have it again. You don't want to do it too many times. You don't want to do it every time, because again, you're going to make him paranoid. Okay. When it comes to like a full-blown attack, if you feel like he's blacked out or whatever, and you don't have any of your tools on you, you have your feet.
Yeah.
I usually go for the part between the ribs and the hindquarter. Just be mindful. If you don't have, if you're barefooted or if you're like have sandals,
Yeah.
I don't like me because I've done this for so long and I'm fairly quick and know what to expect. I don't have an issue using my hands and stuff. But in certain cases, I'll take the precaution and make sure that I won't go in unless I'm prepared. If he wore, like, let's say, for instance, that happened again where he just went black out and you're just completely unprepared, take the time to find something and then come in to correct. Okay. People are afraid, like, well, if the dog got away with it for like 10 seconds, like, I'm like, well, it's not like you could do anything anyways. Right? You might as well take the time to find an object before kicking in. And I actually just saw this. I re-watched it. I came across it again on YouTube, but it's Cesar Millan breaking up a dog fight. And it's a big dog fight, right? It's two dogs, and he tries to come in, and then he quickly backs away because he realizes it's not going to work. And then the owner tries to jump in, and he pushes the owner back, and he says, "No, watch." And he waits at least 5 to 10 seconds before he goes, "Now," and he jumps in because he saw his opening. So whenever I see something happen, a lot of times it looks worse than it is. Okay, and then when people come in to stop the fight and they're pulling the dogs apart, that's typically when things escalate because then the owner gets bit or it intensifies the dogs to bite each other because they're pulling them away. Instead, I wait for my opportunity and then I'll give a good punt or I'll go and I'll look for something, belt, whatever. You just need something to make contact to give them a very good firm correction to snap them out of that mindset. And then once he's de-escalated, then you remove from the situation.
Got it.
Okay. Questions?
No.
So that was pretty simple. Resource guarding is pretty easy to work with. It's just going to take time to practice all that stuff. Okay. So like right now, when you go to get that object, you cue the word drop, make him leave the space, pick it up, put it away, take off his stuff, and then leave it alone. Okay. So then, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right.
Okay. Thanks, Jesse.
Take care.